We are heading back to the book of Daniel this morning. We took a quick break last week, but this morning we'll be back in Daniel chapter 8. So if you've got a Bible with you and you'd like to follow along, feel free to open up to Daniel chapter 8. So, as we get started, I'll ask the kids a question. You guys ready? Do you know anyone who's really, really strong? Elowen?
My dad.
Your dad? Oliver?
My dad.
Your dad too? Evie?
You.
Me? Oh, thanks. Lincoln?
Darren.
Your dad?
No, Darren.
Oh, Darren. I thought you said dad. Ah, Darren's really strong. Interesting. Now, when someone's really, really strong, does that mean that they can just do whatever they want?
No.
Because, like, who could stop them, right? The person who you think of as being really strong, do they usually do the right thing, even though somebody maybe wouldn't be able to stop them from doing something bad? Yeah? Vera?
Jesus?
Yep. Today we're going to talk about a story about people who are really strong, but they don't always do the right thing. We're going to talk about a story where the people who are really strong, because they're really strong, think they can just do whatever they want. What do we do when there are people around who are like that? So we've been going through the book of Daniel, and we've kind of discovered the structure of Daniel has these stories about helping us think, will I humble myself before God or will I not? And there's these two kings who show us what happens when I humble myself before God or when God has to humble me. And then there's these stories about Daniel and how he humbles himself before his God. He confesses his sin, and then God's response of restoration. Then we started into the next layer of the book, and there's these stories about God's people living in exile and realizing the world around me wants me to humble myself before it. And I have to make the choice. Do I humble myself before God, or do I humble myself before Babylon or Persia? And it's a scary choice because there's a fiery furnace and there's a lion's den. But God's people in these stories are faithful and God rescues them. Now we're going to move from the first half of the book down into the second half of the book. So we're leaving the Aramaic section and going back into the Hebrew section, into the second part of the chiastic structure in Daniel chapter 8. Now, you guys might know this. The book of Daniel is quite a bit different in the first half than it is in the second half. The first half has stories like the fiery furnace and the lion's den and the humbling of Nebuchadnezzar and things like that. The second half doesn't have so many stories as much as it has visions and prophecy. The first half is really friendly towards preachers. The second half, not quite so much. It's a little bit harder to work your way through a chapter like we're going to be in today, in Daniel 8, and this vision of a goat and a ram, and try to work out what are we supposed to take away from this on a Sunday morning. So, bear with me. We're going to be in Daniel chapter 8. Now, in terms of the timeline, for the last couple of Sundays, we've kind of been fixated on this one point here in 539 BC, a really, really important date in history and in the book, because this is when the Babylonian Empire falls to the Persian Empire. And Cyrus the Great, or as he's called in this book sometimes, Darius the Mede, takes over rulership of the city of Babylon and most of the known world in this place, from the Babylonians to the Persians. Today, we're quite late on in Daniel. We're in Daniel chapter 8. The only thing that we have read so far in our series that you wouldn't have read if you're going through this chronologically is Daniel 9 and Daniel's prayer of repentance. Everything else we've already read. The fiery furnace, the lion's den, Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, the overturn from Babylon to Persia, all that's happened so far in the book. But chronologically, we're actually moving backwards into, as Daniel's going to tell us, the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, which means Babylon is still the ruling empire in the world. It's not Persia yet, which is going to be relevant because we're going to read a lot about them. So let's jump in and read the first probably sort of 4 verses of Daniel chapter 8. In the 3rd year of the kingdom of Belshazzar, the king, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me previously. That's the story we're going to read next week, or a few weeks from now in Daniel chapter 7. And I saw in the vision, and when I saw, I was in Susa, the citadel, that was in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision, and I myself was at the stream of Ulai. And I lifted my eyes, and I saw, and look, a ram standing before the stream, and it had 2 horns. And the horns were long, but one was longer than the second. And the longer one came up after the other one. And I saw the ram charging westward and northward and southward. And none of the beasts stood before it, and there was no rescuing from its power. And it did what it wanted, and it became strong. So we've got a ram, sort of a lopsided ram with 2 horns. It's powerful, it's intimidating, and it can do whatever it wants, and no one can do anything about it. Geographically, Susa is quite a ways east of Babylon. So Babylon is already east of Jerusalem. Even further is this place called Susa. So Daniel goes on, and I was considering this, and look, a he-goat coming from the west across the face of the whole earth, and it was not touching the ground, and the he-goat had a conspicuous horn between its eyes. Then it came toward the ram that had the 2 horns that I saw standing before the stream, and it ran at it with the rage of its power. And I saw it approaching the ram, and it was furious at it, and it struck the ram, and it broke its 2 horns. And there was not strength in the ram to stand before him. And he threw it down to the ground and trampled it. And there was no one who could rescue the ram from its power. And the he-goat grew exceedingly great. And at the height of its power, the great horn was broken. And 4 conspicuous horns came up in place of it, toward the 4 winds of heaven. So there's a goat. Ordinarily, you would expect a goat to have 2 horns, but this goat is strange. Either it has the 2 horns as well as, or it only has like this 1 horn right in the middle of its eye. So there's this strange unicorn goat that's fast and it's dangerous and it becomes strong, but at the height of its power, the horn is broken. Daniel then goes on and he says, and from one of them, that's those 4 horns that grew up, came forth a horn, a little one, and it grew exceedingly toward the south and toward the east and towards the beautiful land. And it grew up to the hosts of heaven, and it threw down to the ground some of the host and some of the stars and trampled them. Even against the prince of the host, it acted arrogantly and took away from him the regular burnt offering, and the place of his sanctuary was overthrown. And on account of transgression, the host was given over to the horn in addition to the regular burnt offering. And it cast down truth to the ground, and it acted, and it had success. And I heard a certain holy one speaking, and a certain other holy one said to the specific one who was speaking, for how long is the vision concerning the regular burnt offering, and the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and the host to trampling? And he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary will be restored. So there's this little horn that grows up in the place of one of these 4 horns. and it's proud, even to the point of contesting with the angels, the holy ones. And it even displaces God's holy offering. So this is a somewhat confusing vision that Daniel receives. He's seeing these animals that are attacking each other. He's seeing these horns that are breaking and then growing up. And we're kind of left wondering, what are we going to do with this? Fortunately, the very next thing that's going to happen is an angel is going to explain exactly what the vision means to Daniel. So this is what happens. And then when I, Daniel, saw the vision, and I was seeking understanding, there was one standing before me with the appearance of a man, and I heard the voice of a human at the Uli, and he called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. And he came beside where I was standing, and when he came, I became terrified, and I fell prostrate on my face, and he said to me, Understand, Son of Man, that the vision is for the time of the end. And when he spoke with me, I fell into a trance with my face to the ground, and he touched me and made me stand on my feet. And he said, Look, I am making known to you what will happen in the period of wrath, for it refers to the appointed time of the end. The ram that you saw, who had 2 horns, represents the kings of Media and Persia. And the hairy he-goat is the kingdom of Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes, he is the first king. And the horn that was broken. And then there arose 4 horns in place of it. These are the 4 kingdoms that will arise from his nation, but not with his power. And at the end of their kingdom, when the transgressions are completed, a king will arise. Let's pause there in the middle of verse 23. So there's no need to speculate. The lopsided ram with 2 horns, that's the kingdom of the Medes and Persians, the Achaemenid Empire. We also know that the fast, powerful goat that attacks the ram is the kingdom of Greece, and that the first horn is the first king of that kingdom. In terms of the little horn, we know it's a king. It tells us here. We don't get told his name or which country he's the king of, but we know he's a king. And we do get told a few things about his life. So this is what it says about this guy, this little horn. Backing up to the start of the verse. And at the end of their kingdom, when the transgressions are completed, a king will arise, fierce in countenance and skilled in riddles, and his power will grow, but not by his own power. And he will cause fearful destruction, and he will succeed, and he will act, and he will destroy the mighty and the people of the holy ones. And by his planning he will make a success of deceit by his hand. And in his mind he will boast, and in their ease he will destroy many, and even against the prince of princes he will rise up, and he will be broken, but not by human hands. And the vision of the evening and the morning that has been described, it is true. And you seal up the vision, for it refers to many days to come. The last verse of the passage says, And I, Daniel, was overcome, and I became ill for some days, and I performed the business of the king, and I was dismayed over the vision, and I did not understand it. All through the book of Daniel have been stories of visions that people can't understand. Kings who then ask the wisest people in their kingdom, how do I understand this? And always Daniel is able to interpret it. But this time, Daniel does not understand what he's being shown. So we're left with questions about the identity of this little horn. Who is this? So as we consider that this morning, I recognize we're starting off in quite a kind of academic approach to this, but it's a passage that gives lots of questions. I wanted to share some historical events with you. First, we need to talk about a rather famous individual called Alexander the Great. So as the empire of the Medes and Persians dominates the known world, a power rises up in Greece. And that is primarily supported by this king called Alexander the Great, who lived from 356 to 323 BC. He became king of Macedonia when he was just 20 years old. And by 334 BC, he had launched a military campaign against the Persian Empire. He did indeed defeat King Darius III. That's not the Darius who's mentioned in the book of Daniel. It's a later ruler. He defeated King Darius III. And that victory that Alexander the Great has is what's being talked about here in the book of Daniel. The fast goat that's from Greece, the horn on its head is the first king, defeating the empire of Persia. And just over a decade after that, Alexander had conquered most of the known world, from Greece to Egypt, through Persia, and indeed all the way to India. So this is the picture of this goat that becomes powerful. There's something else in our passage here in Daniel that is predicted by Daniel's vision, which is that at just 32 years old, Alexander the Great died suddenly. Not in battle, not by assassination, but he was on his way back from a military campaign. He stops in Babylon, of all places, and in 323 BC, he dies of seemingly fever or sickness or possibly some kind of poison. It's actually not known. He just dies. Daniel 8:8 says, at the height of its power, the large horn will be broken. So this abrupt end, the shocking end to his life, is being predicted by Daniel's vision. The next thing that Daniel says happens is after this horn is suddenly and surprisingly broken, 4 horns grow up in its place, 4 conspicuous horns on this goat. After Alexander the Great died, his son did not receive his kingdom because he had been killed. And his second son also did not receive his kingdom because he had also been killed. Instead, what happened is his kingdom got divided up between his 4 generals. Ptolemy, Seleucus, I don't think I'm going to pronounce this right, Lysimachus, and Cassander are the 4 generals of Alexander the Great who receive his kingdom. The 4 horns that grow up and take over his kingdom, but not with his same power. A whole bunch of wars then take place, lots of battles within the world. And there's different power struggles, and there's deceptions that go on, and eventually the descendants of Seleucus kind of emerge the most powerful, and you begin what historically we call the Seleucid Empire. Within the Seleucid Empire, then a king arrives, who's called Antiochus IV, the self-named Antiochus Epiphanes. So in our vision in Daniel, after the 4 horns, a small horn grows up. A little horn comes out of the 4. So Antiochus rose out of the Seleucid kingdom, one of Alexander's generals. And his rise to power was unexpected and controversial. Most people argued he didn't actually have the right to be ruler, but it was one that he claimed for himself. Quite possibly why he's called a little horn. And he grows and he expands. Daniel tells us he grew towards the south and the east and the beautiful land. So later in the book of Daniel and in the book of Ezekiel, the beautiful land is a term that refers to God's place, to Israel. Antiochus Epiphanes, he attacked, or rather he expanded southward into Egypt, he expanded eastward into Persia, and he did indeed invade Judea, the beautiful land. He attacked Jerusalem, and he interfered specifically in Jewish religious life. And he desecrated God's temple. So Daniel tells us, this little horn will set itself up to be great as the prince of the host, and it will take away the daily sacrifice in the sanctuary. So what happened is this guy, Antiochus Epiphanes, this king from the Seleucid Empire, he outlawed regular Hebrew religion. He required everyone to worship Hellenistic gods like Zeus. In 167 BC, he set up an altar to Zeus in the Jewish temple, and he sacrificed a pig on it. In the book of 1 Maccabees, this event, what he did in the temple, is called the Abomination of Desolation. He instigated massive persecution against God's people, and there was a revolt as a result, which is what the books of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Maccabees are about, and it's what when eventually the temple is rededicated to God in 164 BC, that's what the celebration of Hanukkah is about for the Jewish people. So Daniel tells us that the time for this abomination of desolation, to create the desolation, will last for 2,300 evenings and mornings. Now, scholars are divided about whether or not that means 2,300 days, or if the total number of evenings and mornings adds up to 2,300. So that it would then be 1,150 days, makes 2,300 evenings and mornings. Whichever way you kind of take that, it actually does pretty well fit into the timeline of what happened with Antiochus Epiphanes. As I mentioned, the temple is rededicated in 164 BC. 2,300 days before that is about 6.3 years, and that's around about the time Antiochus begins oppressing the Jewish people. Almost exactly 1,150 days before that is when the abomination of desolation took place, and Antiochus removed sacrifices from the temple. Finally, we're told in Daniel 8 that this little horn will be destroyed, but not by human power. Not unlike Alexander the Great, Antiochus died suddenly in 164 BC, probably by disease or possibly madness, while he was on a military campaign in Persia. He's not killed in battle, he's not assassinated, he just dies. So that's a lot of information about his life and other historical events that the book of Daniel, you can very easily overlay Daniel's vision with these historical events and see how they line up. And for some of us, this is maybe a little bit unexpected because at least this is for me. I'm used to thinking about these prophecies from the book of Daniel not referring to things that are past, but things that are future. Thinking about the end times, right? When there'll be an individual called the beast or the Antichrist that Jesus talks about. Jesus, in fact, refers to the abomination of desolation from his point of view as something that is also future. And I don't think we're unjustified to think about these things as being future, because we're told in Daniel 8:17, this vision refers to the time of the end. This is probably something we'll discuss a little bit more in the class after lunch if you want to ask some questions about it, but I would suggest that somehow in this vision, God is showing Daniel information about what would happen in the days of Antiochus IV, and is at the same time showing us something about what will one day happen in the time of the end. But that reflection that this vision has on what will happen in the future is not mainly what I want to talk about this morning. What I want to show you is that though this vision is strange and a little hard to understand, and sometimes we're not exactly sure what to do with it, it is very much connected to the overall themes in the book of Daniel. So next week, we're going to explore these a little bit further, but this week, I'll demonstrate to you how that's true. This vision talks about people in the world who appear to be unconquerably powerful. The ram and the goat, that no one can stand against them. And yet, they all come to an end. And one of the main themes in the book of Daniel is the overturning of human kingdoms. People like Belshazzar, who seems untouchable, drinking wine from the vessels from God's temple. But God only has to click his fingers, and his kingdom and his life come to an end. This book is about kings who, by their own strength, think that they can just do whatever they want. They can require people to worship them. They can require people to pray to them. And if those people resist, they have the power to put them to death. And the stories have shown that they're wrong. That these human kings are not as strong as they think they are. They're like a ram or like a goat who is just going to get taken out by the next one in line. This has been a book about people who are proud, like this little horn, who thinks it can rise up to the hosts of heaven and it can depose whoever it wants. This has been a book about proud kings oppressing God's people and having to learn that they are not as mighty as they think that they are. We've seen repeatedly that God gives power to whom he wills. He gives the kingdom to the ones he wants to have it. Even the humblest of men he sets over it, is what Nebuchadnezzar learned. This is also not the first time, nor will it be the last time in the book that we see human kingdoms or human kings behaving like animals. Nebuchadnezzar's human mind is taken away and he's given the mind of a beast. We're going to see in a few weeks more human nations described as animalistic. This is a key theme in the book of Daniel, and I'm going to come back to that one here in just a minute, actually. But God is able to use evil kingdoms to do his work, despite the fact that they're evil. And God doesn't intend the punishment that he has put his people under here in exile to last forever. God intends to bring a restoration, which we saw in the story of the 70 weeks. So there's at least 7 different themes in this vision that connect us to different places in the book of Daniel. And next Sunday, we're going to explore a little bit with the next story we're going to look at, how this works out in terms of the overall message of the book. But there's not time to do that this morning. Instead, what I want us to consider is, what is the purpose for which God gives Daniel this vision? And then therefore, what is the purpose for which it's in our Bibles this Sunday morning? Because here's something really peculiar. God gives Daniel the vision. Then someone tells Gabriel to go help Daniel understand the vision. I always kind of chuckle at that bit because it says, make this man understand. It's like Daniel's standing there totally perplexed about what's going on with this ram and this goat. And so the angel's like, all right, I give up. Gabriel, just go explain it to him. That's probably not intended in the text, but it always makes me chuckle. But why? If God was just going to explain it anyway, if he was going to tell him that the goat is the Medes and the Persians, or the ram is the Medes and the Persians, and the goat is the kingdom of Greece, why not just explain that in the first place? What's the point of giving him a difficult vision to understand? Why did I have to try to preach this weird message this Sunday? I would say that God is predicting future events, but the vision is more than just a prophecy. Right? It's a story, it's imagery. It's a way to look at the things going on around you that help you see them in a different way. God doesn't just want Daniel to know what's going to happen in the future. He wants to give him a lens through which to look at life. I often want to know what's going to happen in the future, but I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So I could ask God, and maybe he would tell me. But that's not really what this story is about. It's helping us see the world in a new way. So let me go back to what I said about how Daniel is looking at these powerful kings and these powerful kingdoms around him. And God is re-representing that as animals. I've talked about this before, I'll reiterate what I said. As imagers of God, ones who reflect him, we are called to be animals, but to be more than animals. God has given us that task. So when we separate ourselves from God, we diminish the very thing that makes us human, and we become more like animals. There'll be times in your life when someone or something attempts to convince you that you owe it loyalty and devotion. And the book is helping you look at situations like that and ask yourself if that thing really deserves your loyalty and your devotion, or is it like the ram? Yes, it's powerful. The ram looks powerful, but there's a goat coming. It's just going to be one more kingdom overturned. And the little horn might be terrifying, but it will be broken. So it's helping you reinterpret the power that people seem to have, the influence and the authority that people around you seem to have. It's helping you recognize it doesn't matter how great or powerful a person, kingdom, or king looks, they will all fall. It's difficult to think of seemingly unconquerable powers in this world being temporary. Some things seem like they're permanent, are going to last forever. But the book is offering us a different perspective. It may appear at times that the wealth and the influence that some people have is what I need. That's the desirable thing in life, to be able to be like that. I think Daniel is telling us that all that stuff is actually overrated. And finally, we instead worship the one, the only one, whose kingdom lasts forever. Nebuchadnezzar realized this in Daniel 4. Darius realized this in Daniel 6. Both of them admitted, I see it now. There is one God whose kingdom lasts forever. The kingdoms of this world just come one after another. So when we ask ourselves, who will I humble myself before? Recognize all these things that seem powerful, all these things that seem permanent, are small and they're temporary. But we only worship the one whose kingdom lasts forever. Let's pray. Father, I thank you this morning for your word and the things you teach us through it. Lord, I thank you for the way you help us understand that all of these things in life that look so big and so scary, Lord, they are all in your hands. Our lives are in your hands. Father, I pray that you would remind us, Lord, as we go through these days, Lord, that you are the one who is powerful. Lord, you are the one who guides us and walks beside us. Lord, I pray that you would receive all of the honor and the glory and the worship this morning. Amen.